How to save thousands of dollars. And yes, I'm not kidding. It can be done. Welcome to Senior Insights. My name is Cynthia, and I'm going to tell you the story of how I have been able to save thousands of dollars over the last 3.5 months. I'm going to encourage you to stick to the end of the video, because then I will tell you what I feel was the most effective and helpful way to get me on the right track. So basically, it all began in December of 24, which is 3.5 months ago, almost 4 months ago. My dishwasher broke down. So big deal, you know. I went and I purchased another dishwasher, and it cost me around $1,000. And I was fine with that. And then I came home and I said to myself, it was almost like I got hit over the head with a baseball bat or slapped in the face or something. I said, you spent $1,000 very casually. It didn't seem to bother you. What is that all about? Are you able to really do that? And to be honest with you, I didn't really know. But I had been having these anxious feelings that I better not be spending all this money. But I never, ever paid attention to it, because I like to deny things or compartmentalize them or pretend that they're not there or whatever. So just let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 76 years old. I'm a widow. I've been a widow for 10 years. My husband always took care of the finances, and that was fine with me. I liked it that way, and that was fine. Well, he passed away suddenly. There was no planning, no preparation or anything for me in terms of how to handle the finances. So I have had, I've done fine. I'm perfectly fine. I live in a nice house. I have a nice car. I have everything that I need, except the expertise to really manage my money properly and frugally, so that I can be secure for the rest of my life, which is what I would really like to do. I certainly don't want to think about having to leave my home. So I need to know and reassure myself that I have enough money to pay my mortgage until I can no longer stay here. So it came to pass that I realized that I needed to make a change. So the first thing that you have to do, in my opinion, it's just like an alcoholic or a drug addict or something, you have to admit to yourself that you actually have a problem. Because you can go on, like I did for 10 years, thinking everything's rosy, and not even considering where the money was coming from. Well, it was coming from the cooking jar that had been saved for those kinds of, for the mortgage and for my security. So what I did was I acknowledged that I had a problem. And then I did a deep dive into every single penny that I spent in 24. I went through every bank statement. I went through every bill. I went through every credit card statement, everything, and I itemized everything, and I put every single penny that I spent into specific categories. And I was not surprised to see that my house was my biggest expense. I was surprised that the insurance was high, but it's paid within my mortgage, so it didn't seem to be that much of a big deal. But I soon realized that I was spending a lot more than my actual income is, because I am on a fixed income. I am living on my Social Security. The Social Security pays all my bills, with the exception of my mortgage, because my husband had a small life insurance policy. I don't mean like $1 million. I mean like a small. I don't mean 10 either, but it was, not astronomical. And that was supposed to be to help me to get on to have a good foundation, and so that I would be secure. The other thing, the biggest expense, was my car. Now, when my husband passed away, I had a car, and I had a car that was totally paid for, but I didn't maintain it. I let the oil run out, so it killed the engine. So I traded from a totally paid for, decent, late model car to a lease car, which was, in my opinion, one of my biggest mistakes. I've made several, but as far as financial mistakes, that I think was a big one. I did do a video on buying versus leasing, and leasing is fine for some people. So don't just because I said it was my biggest mistake doesn't mean it's your biggest mistake. Then I looked at my car insurance and I said, wow, it was like $1,200, something like that. And I didn't like that. I said, wow, I just didn't, I thought that was an awful lot. So what I did was I just figured out every single expense that I had. Everything. The Amazons, and that was a big one too, and I couldn't tell you half the things that I bought on Amazon, to be honest with you. And then you've got to look at your expenses, and you've got to put them into categories. You've got to look at those expenses and pull out the ones that are fixed expenses. For example, your mortgage, your car payment is a fixed expense, your house insurance is a fixed expense, your car insurance is a fixed expense. There are other things that are monthly, so they may not be fixed. Your electric may go up and down, but you need to have the money to pay for it, and it is a monthly bill. So I consider it a fixed expense, even though it's not consistently the same thing. So you have to make a list of all of your fixed expenses. And I have here someplace, I just set up a ledger sheet with my expenses, the fixed expenses, and I set it up for each month, and each month I write every single expense down. I have a car payment, I have my car insurance, I have Dish, which is my satellite, and I'm talking about that later. Fidium is my internet. I have a dumpster that I have to pay monthly. I have my cell phone that I pay monthly, my mortgage, my health insurance, and then I had the hairdresser because I was going to the hairdresser monthly. Well, I've changed that, so I no longer go monthly. So those fixed expenses are probably pretty common with everyone. So you have your fixed expenses, and then you look and you decide what are your things that are annual expenses. For example, I have a road association, so I have to pay annual dues to the road association. I belong to the lake association, so I have annual dues for that. I'm a registered nurse, so in order to maintain my license, which I don't anymore, but I would need about $100 a year for that. So anything that was an annual expense, you write down, or this is what I did. You don't have to do what I did. I'm just sharing with you how I was successful saving thousands of dollars, and I did save thousands of dollars. Then you break it down even further. So you have your annual expenses. Then you go to your quarterly expenses. And these are not fixed expenses. They are things that maybe, I use the dumpster as an example in my fixed one, but what if you paid it quarterly? You could put it in your the other expenses. other things that you spend money on, like Amazon or Kindle Unlimited or variable expenses, like I have to have my chimney cleaned every year, but every year the expense changes. So what I did was I calculated that I needed at least as much as what I paid last year set aside so that I could pay for my chimney expense instead of taking it out of my monthly expense. That's how I was doing it. I was paying every bill as it came in without any savings or backup. Okay, let's get back to the fixed income, the fixed bills. And you're going to need to look at those and see if there's anything that can be eliminated or reduced. Now, in most cases, there's not an awful lot, but there are some things. The most common one is subscriptions. Do you have streaming subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, Paramount, all those? You need to consider how often do you use them? Do you really need them? Could you cut out one or two? So think about that. I didn't have an awful lot of streaming subscriptions. Actually, I don't have any. However, and I contacted them and I said, I need to reduce my monthly payment or I need to cancel. And guess what? They negotiated with me. So I went from a payment that was $120 something a month to $69 a month. And there was no change in my programming. Now, I don't know if they would do that for everybody. I don't know why they did it, but that's a significant amount of money. That's almost $50 a month. So it worked for me. Now, cell phone, we all have to have cell phones. Even though we don't want to have cell phones, we got to have them. I use Consumer Cellular. They're supposed to be the most reasonable, but I'll tell you, my rate is not the same as what they advertise. If you have Verizon or AT&T, you can shop around and you can find a cheaper rate. Or you can decrease the amount of services that you buy. So you could conceivably decrease your cell bill. Your car insurance, now this is a big one. I told you when I noticed how much my car insurance was, I was stunned. So what I did was I called my insurance agent and I said, you need to find me a cheaper car insurance because I don't want to pay that kind of money. I mean, I only go out once a week. You know, I mean, why should I be paying $1,300 plus a year for car insurance? So anyway, she called me back and she said, you're not going to believe this, but I just saved you $600 a year. I said, you're kidding. So my car insurance bill went from $113 a month to $55 a month. That's a lot. That's $60 something. So if I hadn't stopped and paid attention, I'd just be paying all this money without even thinking about it. Then you notice that I had the hairdresser on my monthly expenses because I was going at least monthly. I was going every 4 to 6 weeks. And it was costing me $55 each time I went. So I figured, well, that originally when I started doing this, I said, well, that's a fixed expense. And then I saw how much money I spent on the hairdresser for a year. And I said, no, I got to think about this. So I committed to myself to not say I was going to go every 2 months or every 3 months or whatever, but to go see how long I could go without a haircut. So I went for well over 3 months without a haircut. So I saved over $100, almost $150. I'm not being exact, but I saved a decent amount of money. And if I continue with that, so what I learned from that is that I can go quarterly. and I'll be satisfied with that. Now, a lot of people, women included, cut their own hair or they cut their husband's hair, so that's another way you can cut expenses. I'm not to that point yet. I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it if I had to, though. I would do whatever it takes to maintain my finances. But right now, I don't need to do that. And everyone says conserve your electricity and conserve this and conserve that. And I'm not so sure that turning off the lights saves you that much. I don't know, because I've never done it, because I have this attitude about it. So we'll see when I start washing my clothes and hanging them outside, because that's something that I have committed to, and I'll see if my electric bill goes down. I heat my home basically with I can never remember a type of heater that runs on electricity. And I shut it off the other day because the temperatures are warming up, and I can be chilly, I can put a sweater on or whatever. So we'll see if I save some money that way for a while until the air conditioning goes on. And then I would suggest that you review those fixed bills quarterly, because you know what, those subscriptions creep up, or providers increase their rates. And if they do, you can always negotiate. I had Sirius Radio, and they sent me a bill that my monthly bill was going to be something like $39 a month. I said, $39 a month to listen to the radio? I don't think so. And I called them up. And I still have Sirius because they gave me a deal that I couldn't refuse, because I enjoy certain stations, and it was worth it to me. But I got them to reduce it, and I think that, we don't do enough of that. So then when you look at your annual and your variable expenses, and those are really hard to reduce because, you have to have your septic system drained, you have to have your heat pump cleaned, you have to have glasses, you have to pay the road association dues. So there's not an awful lot that you can do with that, except you can stop spending money on Amazon. I have not spent any money on Amazon except to get a tripod, which I haven't used for this business since January. So it can be done. And I plan on asking my kids for grocery gift cards and Amazon gift cards, or I have another favorite store that I like, gift cards. So then I can spend money, but it doesn't come out of my money. You have to have home improvement. You have to have enough money so that if you need a gallon of paint, you can buy a gallon of paint. So you need to keep consistently putting the amount of money that you determined you needed after calculating the annual amount and breaking it down into a monthly amount, and it will accumulate so that it's there when you have it. Then there's a miscellaneous thing that we probably don't even think about, but how many times do you drive through Dunkin' Donuts or go to Starbucks? How many times do you go through McDonald's? Gifts, giving, all those things. So you have to get a handle on those, decide how much money you can actually afford to spend, and stick to it. Do homemade gifts. Someday I'll tell you about my experience with homemade gifts. But so then, after you've done all that, it really doesn't take that long. It took me a couple of days, a couple hours at a time. So it's really not that hard. And it's kind of fun, and it's kind of enlightening when you see actually where your money has gone and you had no clue. I mean, you knew on some level, but it didn't bother you. So after you do that, then you have to figure out, well, how much money do I actually have? Do you have any money in savings? I had some money in savings. That's the money that I kept drawing off of. That's the money that was set aside so that it would pay for my mortgage. But that isn't what I was using it for. I was using it for whenever my bank account needed to be backfilled. So I was constantly taking money out of that. Do you have a Social Security check? Most of us are on Social Security. Or do you have a retirement or a disability income or whatever, any of your savings? And then what I did with those, with my income, I have a separate savings account that I've always had. That's the one that I took the money out of. But I set it up so that my mortgage would be automatically paid from that account. So I don't see it, I don't touch it, and the mortgage is paid. Now that only buys me a couple of years to live in my home, that with that system. So that means I got to get on the stick and figure out how to get enough money. So you need to figure out what your fixed expenses are, what your variable expenses are, and create a budget and stick to that budget. What I do when my Social Security check comes in, I know exactly how much money I need to put into my first checking account, which is for the fixed expenses only. Nothing else comes out of that account. And I have to put in $1,400 into my fixed expenses account. No ands, ifs, or buts. That's what I need to survive the electric bill and all that stuff. And then my variable account, which I figured out I needed almost $600 a month to put in the variable, and that will accumulate. That does not get touched until I have to have the septic pumped or until I have to have the chimney cleaned. So those expenses come out of that second checking account, and only those expenses come out of that. Things that are normal, but they're not routine. Well, they're routine annually. And then I have the savings account. So I put $1,400 in the first checking account for fixed. I put almost $600 into the second account for variables, and then I put the remainder of the Social Security check in my savings account. And that savings account is for any emergencies. It's for savings. It's if I have to, for some reason, backfill one of these accounts, that's where it would come from, not from my mortgage money. So far, I have not had to touch that money, and I have just seen it grow. Now, I don't want to totally mislead you with saying you can save thousands of dollars. I have saved a couple of thousands of dollars, but I also had an income tax refund that I put into that savings account. So I have literally, since the beginning of January, saved a few $1,000s. That's very exciting to me because I have not saved any money in 10 years. So to me, that is success. And I need to look forward to the future with my car. I'm going to have to replace that in a year and a half. So I need to either have a down payment for another car or buy a car, pay half price for it, or, whatever I do. But I'm going to need another car, and I need that money. I need that savings. So that's it. And then I told you what really made me successful with this whole plan. I had done all the stuff, analyzing everything. But then I saw a video on a no-spend January because everybody was preparing for, New Year's resolutions and everything. And I said to myself, I think I'm going to try that. So I did. I committed myself to not spending any money whatsoever on anything except my bills for the month of January. And you will never believe, because I never believed it, I did it. I actually did it. It didn't bother me. I did have to tell my friends I was no longer going out to lunch anymore. We brown bagged it and we had a great time. Nice meals. I'll also confess that I had a gift card for the grocery store, so I was able to pick up groceries if I needed them. It was like under $100. Anyway, I got into the mindset of thinking about every single penny I spent, and it has gotten me into the habit of doing that. I'm kind of neurotic about it. I'm very careful now what I spend my money on. So I would strongly suggest that you consider doing a no spend. You don't have to go all out and not spend any money. Maybe you just say, I'm not spending any money on Amazon. And I haven't spent any money on Amazon. And I was spending it all the time. I'd say, oh, I think I'd like this, and then I'd buy it. I don't even know what I got. Anyway, thanks for listening to me. I hope you learned something about it, about saving money and managing your money. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you can share in the comments what you do. I mean, it doesn't have to be my system. Everybody has different systems. We're all unique. A lot of people have a lot less money than I do, so they're not going to be able to say I can save thousands of dollars, but maybe they can say they saved $100. I don't know. I think it's possible if you really, really look. So, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.